But I would, almost argue that a dysregulated nervous system is probably often the first place to start, right? In terms of healing, in terms of making your body actually feel safe enough to lose weight if that's what you're focused on, or to heal. And if you're constantly in the fight and flight mode, it's not going to respond that way. It's going to think that you're being, attacked by a bear.
Yeah.
And so I work with clients a lot of just slowing down.
Hey there. Welcome to ADHD and with Jorie Houlihan. I am your host, Jorie Houlihan. I am an ADHD life coach, speaker, late diagnosed ADHDer, and your guide for the dopamine deprived. My guest today is Rebecca Glick. Rebecca is the founder of Nefesh Living Health and Wellness Coaching and a board certified functional medicine health coach for busy midlife women and moms. As many of us know firsthand, women often juggle everything and take care of everyone else's needs first. Rebecca helps women prioritize themselves, their energy, health, and well-being. Prior to starting Nefesh Living, Rebecca spent more than 2 decades in professional services roles such as public relations, leadership consulting, and executive coaching. She knows what it's like to balance a demanding career, family, and the never-ending to-do list. Her work today blends her behavioral change expertise with a functional medicine lens to help you stop spinning your wheels and stick with the changes you want to make and ultimately help you feel like yourself again. Rebecca likes to say she is the missing piece of the puzzle of navigating your health, the one who helps you bridge the gap between what you know you should do, or maybe what the doctor tells you, and what you will actually do consistently. Her approach focuses on small, intentional changes that can lead to big outcomes. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Thank you, Jory. Happy to be here.
All right. So I've been very excited about this because you and I have spoken a lot about how this works. And I love your approach of small steps and let's make this so this is doable. And as you know, ADHD women, the consistency is always the hard part, right? So I'm very excited to have this conversation today. Let's just dive on in.
Great.
All right. So you've made a unique shift from executive coaching and PR into functional nutrition. So what was the catalyst that convinced you to take such a bold turn in your career?
Yeah, no, great question. So, yeah, I worked in professional services my whole career. I always had a real personal passion around health and wellness. I think just navigating my own health, becoming a mom certainly brought that out. Also, sort of always asking the question of why, right? Not just take this medicine and go home and call me later, but what's going on? And so that really prompted me to be curious about the idea of functional medicine and a more root cause holistic approach. I also came to a point in my career where I was that person running on empty, feeling like I was on this hamster wheel and didn't necessarily want to feel that way anymore. I had a life-changing event with my family. We were part of a shooting that happened on July 4th in Highland Park at the parade. And that really was a wake-up call for me of what's really important in my life. How do I want to spend my time? And so that was a prompting to say, hey, what's my real passion beyond working with organizations and helping them in terms of assessing their talent and identify their next leaders? Really great, amazing, fulfilling work, but I wanted a notch up. And so I pivoted. I got my certification as a functional medicine health coach. I'm a board certified coach through a national organization as well, and really brought all the coaching experience that I've had more on a leadership executive level to a different lens of health and wellness. It's been amazing and just incredibly fulfilling work to help people on a broader scale in their life beyond in the workplace.
So, well, first of all, I'm glad that you and your family are okay. We were supposed
Thank
to go to
you.
that parade and changed our plans that
Mm.
morning. So,
But you know what? A blessing in disguise, right? In some ways, to sometimes these moments that can shatter us also can prompt us to the next thing in our life. And that's also how I look at it.
agreed. So, you emphasize small, sustainable changes for clients struggling with executive dysfunction or overwhelm. So, can you walk us
Mhm.
through a real life example, as Deborah Doobie calls it, quarter-assing it?
Yeah. I know, I love that term. I was like, "Wait, I hadn't heard that." I mean, the typical half-assing, but yes, quarter-assing is even better.
That for those of you who don't know, that's doing just enough to begin, right? Do you have a real life example of where doing something like that led to a big outcome?
I think I really work with clients to move away from boiling the ocean, right? Because, whether you have ADHD, whether you're just a human trying to make a change, but make it this big, mighty, I have to do everything, all or nothing, restrictive. It isn't going to work. I've seen it, and that's what the data shows. Small, tiny steps, training not only your brain, but just the see it to believe it mindset of, oh, this actually does make a difference. Let me add a little bit more. So I can give you an example with sleep. It's a very common thing that I hear women, they're wired but tired, or they're sleeping 7, 8, 9 hours, whatever, they think they're supposed to get in terms of quantity, but they're still waking up not feeling great, not energy throughout the day. That can be a lot of different things. But I had a client that said she came up with this idea. You know what? I want to try to go to bed 30 minutes earlier, a few days a week, not every day. And I want to try to, put away my phone or screens also maybe 30 minutes earlier. That's all she did. And if, that can be a lot in itself, but it wasn't something that she said she was going to do every single day, or if they were going out or, had plans or an engagement. It was just, let me try 2 or 3 nights and see what this feels like and see if I start to notice a difference. And that's how people build from, "Oh my gosh, I can't do this," to, "Oh, something small actually worked." And she noticed a benefit. My role is to be the guide on the side, right?
Mhm.
Where I'm not telling people you must like turn the temperature down to 60 degrees or close your blinds or do this or never look at a screen. I'm offering up options in terms of what data has shown that works. And my clients are picking what they want to, what I say, experiment with and try out and see what works and then keep laddering on and building from there. And that's what's really going to make people keep up sustainable changes, is when it's on their terms and when it's small.
I could not agree more. And I I think so many people, when they want to make these changes, especially with ADHD, we tend to have this all or nothing thing, right? And so
Mhm.
we tend to want to do all the things yesterday, and it doesn't work. And the way you just described it is perfect. When they can pick, okay, let me try this for a while. Okay, let me try this if this doesn't work. But also remembering, if that doesn't happen to work for you, that doesn't mean that you have failed. It just simply means that,
Exactly.
that
That's
was
not the
just not a
right
good fit
thing
for
for
you.
you. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So, yes, I absolutely believe that to be true, but it's very hard for us. I will say, it is harder for us to do that, but we're like, "But I wanna do all the things." A lot of your work centers on helping clients find their bigger why. So,
Mm-hmm.
how do you help someone surface a purpose, so to speak, that is strong enough for them to sustain the long-term health changes? Because
Yeah.
sometimes we think we have the right why, or what I like to say, what is important to you about this? So how do you
Right.
help guide them for that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very individualized. That's always where I start. So we're never diving in, okay, to, try this with your sleep or let's focus. It's always a session where we're just talking about the why and the foundation of why we're making this change. And you said, why is this important to you? And how will this actually impact your life? For example, there's nothing wrong with someone saying, I really want to lose some weight or I want to lose 5 pounds, but I might ask a client, what will that actually do? What will that allow you to do? And we might get to, you know what, I want to lose weight so that over the long term I'm healthy and someday I'm mobile enough where I can pick up my grandkids and run around. Or, I want to do X, Y, and Z, not just so that I'm not tired anymore, but I want to feel more presence with my family. Things that are bigger life importances. And sometimes it takes a little unpacking for someone to realize what that might be. But again, the data, what I've seen is that having that anchor is what keeps you motivated when you're busy, when you're tired, when just life happens. It's what keeps you going versus, oh, I just want to like lose that stubborn 5 pounds. And so that's where we start. And we really typically, have this visioning foundation session to really land on what that will be our continued anchor.
I actually lived that at one point. At one point in time, I had made this goal that I was just going to get the best shape of my life. And I had a number on this scale thing.
Uh-huh.
And then I gained weight. And I was like, okay, that was not what I was expecting. So I went back and I looked at the goal. I'm like, why do I have this number on the scale?
Yep.
It was really my mom's thing, really. And I said, okay, what do I think this number is going to give me? Because that's what I'm really looking for. And it was the same thing. It was, what about this is important to me? What do I think this is going to give me? And it was, well, I want to feel good in my clothes again.
Mhm.
I want to have energy. I want to feel strong and I want my mobility to improve. And once that became much more specific, just not the number on the scale, everything else started to fall into place. I started paying much more attention to how I felt when I ate. That makes me tired. That goes against my goal of having energy. Okay, I'm not going to have that for lunch because I know I'm not going to feel good, etc. So that
Right.
is, I think it's a really great strategy to be like, what about this is important to you? Because otherwise things are so vague. When you agree?
Yes. It's vague and it's hard to stick with it because we have so much competing things for our time and our attention and our motivation, right? So if there's something really clear that we can hang on to, even on the worst days where we just feel
Yes.
like, "Oh my god, I can't do anything." It's like, is this serving that goal or is it detracting from that? And I love that you design that yourself, right? And that's like my goal is to help people build changes that are sustainable and that they can keep up with. And sometimes when the goal is a little too narrow without that bigger why, you can kind of keep it up for a short time period, but then it starts to unravel. And as you shared in your story,
Mhm.
and so that's kind of a must of how I, start my coaching work, just for the reason you shared.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. So, GLP-1s are in the news and a lot of people are
Mhm.
using them. So, how has the rise of that, like GLP-1, weight loss medications, et cetera, how has that changed the landscape for you coaching wise for you and your peers?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's certainly a hot topic. I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not providing or condoning GLPs one way or the other, but it certainly is something that comes up in my client base. And I think there's actually, from my perspective, it heightens the need for maybe working with a coach or nutritionist or someone in that space to guide you. I think there's things that people may or may not realize. And again, not from like a medical perspective, but just what I have come to learn in terms of, GLPs may provide some appetite suppression, right? And so, how do you work to continue to ensure that you're getting the right nutrients that your body needs for cellular function and other things that maybe if you're eating less food, it just can be a little bit harder to, work into the daily routine. Muscle mass is a big piece too,
Yeah.
especially for perimenopausal women that you're paying attention to. So, are you getting enough protein, the right strength train, all the things that people talk about in that space alongside supporting that. And so I think that there's lifestyle pieces that go really hand in hand with the potential use of a GLP, that it's not just one or the other. I think where you can kind of get a little tricky is seeing that as more of a quick fix. Okay, great. I can lose weight. I can feel good in my clothes without also adapting those lifestyle pieces as you go. And, with the one thing that I can say about quick fixes or my philosophy is that, the only quick fix that I know of is that there's not quick fixes. And you kind of, it's like you got to find a happy medium. And so I think that, to sum up, there's doing it with the guided support because if it's just about the GLP and not necessarily changing other habits in your life, when you stop taking that GLP, you may revert back to how you were before. And so I think
Right.
it's important to do it with support.
I I very much agree with this. People I know who have been on it, they have been really surprised at the habits that are still hard to walk away from. They're just used to
Hmm.
eating at this time of
Right.
day,
That's
but
not
they're
going to
like,
change. Right.
yeah.
Right.
And so you have to work through that, right? Because it's muscle
Hmm.
memory in a lot of ways. And like you said, if it's something that they don't also work on, in addition to just not eating as much, you're much more likely to revert back to it. The path of least resistance. And I like that you also brought up the thing about muscle mass, especially for women who are perimenopausal, menopausal, because that is a big factor as we are going through that phase, is making sure we don't lose our muscle mass because we lose it a lot
Right.
faster. So you
Exactly.
want to
And
make sure you're
we're naturally losing it at that age. Exactly.
there be people in my life who did need it and who have taken it and have had really great results. But I also agree with the whole, but there's no quick fix, right? Like everything
Yep. Yep.
you gotta deal with all of it.
I
So
think if that's the mindset going in, then that is where I think it gets tricky. I think if it's someone making holistic changes in their life and they need that boost, or there's, a medical reason, there's a lot of great benefit, right? But it's not one or the other in my mind.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So for clients who do struggle with all or nothing thinking, as I mentioned before, or
Hmm.
perfectionism,
Yeah.
which is kind of in a lot of ways the same thing, especially for those of us with ADHD, what is the most common mental trap that they fall into in your experience? And how do you help them escape that?
It's a great question. I think it's so common. Again, to an early question you asked, among ADHD likely, but also just among humans, right? That you get into this. If I'm not going to have the perfect workout and the perfect meal plan and the perfect everything, like why bother? Or even the mindset of like, oh, I had this like, cookie or something, maybe I wasn't supposed to have. So forget it. Now I'm just going to like go down like and just eat whatever. And I think recognizing, like, I really try to help my clients recognize we are human and there's no perfection is just the enemy of good, right? As we often say, but it truly applies here in that it'll just unravel things. And so that's where I go back to the small, doable, gradual, see it to believe it approach and then keep layering on with people because that's where they're going to go, over the long term, right? For sustainable changes. And so I'm working with people to try to reduce that perfectionist mindset or just where can we take things a little bit slower, honoring that people want to feel like they're making progress. It's like holding all of those things, right? That's the kind of space that I'm creating, just letting people talk about that swirl and what that feels like.
Okay. I love
And there's
that.
also, I was going to say too, there's a great book by BJ Fogg, if you've heard of it, called Tiny Habits. And it's
That name is really familiar. I think I've seen that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and it's really, one of the key premises is about also anchoring a change or a new habit to something else you're already doing, right? So or, some people call that habit stacking. There's lots of terminologies. I've really seen that work successfully personally with my clients where it's like, okay, what could you add on or where might make sense? Like when I brush my teeth, I'm going to do 10 squats. Or when I buckle my seatbelt, I'm going to take 3 deep breaths before I, move on to where I'm going. Because then it like takes off that mental load and that extra piece of how the heck am I going to get this done? Or when am I going to do this? Or I'm so busy. And the more we can do things that we already are for sure doing, like hopefully brushing our teeth, then it just becomes part of the routine. And so that's also something that, I bring forward in terms of just that change background and just helping people think about routine in a way that doesn't feel so burdensome.
Yeah. I do that with my clients as well. I don't want this to feel like just one more task you have to do.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
Yeah, I want this to feel like it's just something that can easily be integrated into something you're already doing. I love that you do that too. All right, so blood sugar balance and nervous system health seem central to your philosophy. So what myths or misconceptions do you wish more people
Mm.
understood about those topics?
Great question. Blood sugar, I think there's certainly a myth, and I held this too. I think I heard the word blood sugar and thought diabetes. If you're not diabetic, then that has nothing to do with you. And that is really not true. um,
No.
and I would say, I think there's data out there that probably close to 90% of Americans have some kind of blood sugar dysregulation or insulin resistance that they may or may not realize. And that affects your energy, your hormones, your sleep, certainly affects your ability to lose weight, to stay focused, so many different things. And so that's certainly an area that I focus on with clients in terms of eating patterns and timing of eating and what we're eating and nutrient dense meat. I mean, there's lots of things that play into that. But I think busting the myth that that's like, oh, that's just not for me is certainly something that, yes, I really believe in. I think when it comes to nervous system, I also think there's probably a bit of, a misconception where, yes, I'm stressed and that's just life and like that's how it goes. And yeah, I want to be less stressed or I want to not feel, in that fight and flight mode. But that's sort of nice to have versus let's focus on nutrition or sleep or exercise. And it's like everything's important, but I would, almost argue that a dysregulated nervous system is probably often the first place to start, right? In terms of healing, in terms of making your body actually feel safe enough to lose weight if that's what you're focused on, or to heal. And if you're constantly in the fight and flight mode, it's not going to respond that way. It's going to think that you're being, attacked by a bear.
Yeah.
And so I work with clients a lot of just slowing down. I usually start each session with some type of grounding or breathing, like come into this space. Let's just be present because it has so much impact on all the other things. And I think it's definitely not a nice to have.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like this topic of regulating your nervous system is becoming more, I'm seeing it more often where that's
Yes.
becoming a regular topic, which I'm happy to see because I agree. If your nervous system is dysregulated, it's really hard to get decent sleep or to eat a decent
Yes.
meal or any of that because
Yes.
it affects your digestion, it affects
Mhm.
how you sleep, etc. With people with ADHD, having that emotional dysregulation obviously is going to
Mhm.
contribute even more to a dysregulated nervous system. So understanding what that looks like for you as an individual, I think is
Yes.
really important because
Yes.
it's going to be different for everybody.
100%. And that's, and my approach is very personalized, as I'm sure yours is. It's a one-on-one setup where it's really understanding what works for you, not your neighbor, not your sister. And for everyone's, especially I think nervous system and how they relax and how they notice the cues and what helps them feel in a more regulated state is going to look so different.
Yeah, exactly. You can have one person who's like, they actually really do love the meditation and this deep breathing. You
Mhm.
can have another person where like going out and doing some heavy labor is like their
Right.
way of
Right. Like if one
relaxing.
more
So
person tells me to just breathe, like leave me alone, you know? I've definitely had people say that.
I know, I know. Okay, so next question. You talk about the overlap between pelvic health, the nervous system, and digestion.
Mhm.
So, first of all, can you talk a little bit more about that? And can you maybe share a story or a case that illustrates that connection in practice?
Sure. Yeah. So I'd say through, data studies, through my own personal experience, conversations with practitioners, I mean, the pelvic floor lives in the body, right? It's the system, right, that is very interconnected to digestion, to muscle tightness, to your nervous system, once again, in terms of bloating and constipation, like all of these things are very, very intertwined. And so sometimes it's like, where do you start, right? Where you sort of unravel, someone might have pelvic pain and then looking at, well, what's contributing to that? And there can be medical things, but there are also very real lifestyle things like digestion, like how much fiber you're intaking, how are you pooping? Like all of those things
Yeah.
are going to make a difference in how you feel. And also when we're in a stressed, kind of crunched, compressed state, that's also affecting the whole region. And so it's one of those areas that I think people don't really understand how interconnected they are. And I think there's just more and more coming out and more people being in tune of, wait a minute, this is symptom A might really be as a result of, symptom B or something else that's going on. Yeah, it's a great question.
That's one that I am paying more attention to myself. I mean, so my background prior, I mean, I've had a number of different lives, but I was a clinical massage therapist for about 10 years. And I was really into trying to educate people on, because they'd say, well, I don't understand why my shoulder's hurting if this is what's wrong, right? It's like, but that's the compensation or
Yes,
whatever it is.
exactly.
And trying to get them to understand, okay, so if your chest is tight because you're on your computer all the time, then your
Hmm.
back is
Hmm.
overstretched. So we have to
Right.
figure out how to open that up. And then that impacts your hips and da, da, da.
Yes.
So I'm happy to hear you talking about how they're so interrelated because people really don't. This is what one of many things that frustrates me about our medical system is that they tend to look at everything and like one piece of the
In a
puzzle.
vacuum, right, yes.
Yeah. And they don't look at the system as a whole. And I just think that's such a big mistake in so many cases because everything is connected in some way
I
and you have to look at the
100% agree.
whole. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
glad to
I
hear
mean,
that.
and hence, hence, as I said earlier, like that was where it drove me specifically to functional medicine and really studying coaching in that particular space, because that is what functional medicine is. Absolutely, the premise is about connecting those dots and that all of our systems are connected and talking to each other. And if one system is out of whack, it's throwing off the whole regard. And it's not to say that traditional Western medicine does not have a place, but I see it as an and versus one or the other.
Right. I agree. It definitely has its place. I just wish they were a little more open to other things besides just that. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? Okay.
I'm you're speaking my language.
So you just ran a Feel Your Best Inside and Out event with a color
Mhm,
analyst.
mhm.
Why is the intersection of appearance and inner wellness so important to your work with clients?
That's a great question. Yeah. I partnered with Judy Lee from Euphoric. So she's a color analysis. And we had a night, of style. People came into a store every in Winnetka locally for discounted shopping, wellness chats with me if they had any burning questions, like why am I up at 3 in the morning every day? And then mini color sessions with Judy. And it was great because people could then shop, based on learning a bit more about their color. And I think, we felt like there was just a connection of how you feel externally when you look in the mirror is just important, is how you feel in your body. And it's not a vanity thing necessarily, but it's how do I feel in my skin? How am I taking care of myself? And the importance of self-care and the importance of even just like connection and community is also what we're trying to do and maybe planning another one. But I think it's just, do you feel confident? Do you feel energized? And certainly with the colors, there's a lot to learn about what brightens your skin, what maybe changes your mood a bit. And so even just that piece in itself, I see as like part of wellness, right? In terms of just how you feel in your own skin. And then of course, how we're taking care of our bodies is linked into that. So we thought it was a fun play to link the inside and out. And I also love that store. So all of those things together, it was ripe for a nice evening.
Yeah, I thought that was a great idea,
Thank
because
you.
very often our health impacts how we see ourselves, but our
Hmm.
clothes absolutely impact how we
Yeah,
see ourselves as well. So it's a nice intersection. I like that.
thank you.
And I was sorry that I missed it. I wanted to go.
That's okay. We'll
Um,
we'll try to plan another one.
all right. That's because I got to fix my colors. I got to tell you. Anyway, what advice do you give to midlife women who feel stuck, foggy, overwhelmed, right? But don't know where to begin with their health journey. They're feeling just totally overwhelmed. Sometimes there's too much information, or they just don't know where to look. So, what advice do you have for them?
That's a great question. I mean, I think so many women in midlife probably start to even feel like, gosh, do I have ADHD? Because I feel so just all over the place. There's so much coming at me. My body is changing and no one warned me. Um, and what is going on? And then everything starts, is this a symptom of perimenopause? Is this like, you can really make yourself nuts. But that is really the role that I play is to help people slow down and cut through that confusion and clutter. There's so much information on social media and just everywhere flying around, and I really help people try to figure out what's right for their body based on, what we talk about. They share with me about their symptoms, their challenges, what's going on, what's their goals, what's their routine. So it's really a deep dive into personally what's going on for them. And as I said before, helping people understand what might be right for someone else or someone else that you know or someone that you see online is not necessarily what do you need. And so I spend a lot of time with my clients really helping them look inward in terms of just increased awareness. Like as we talked about, what do I need to feel regulated and relaxed? What do I need to, get to sleep in a way that feels restorative, and what am I noticing? And that skill, it can be tricky, but that is also what really opens up, I think, the aperture of how we feel is when we start to look a little bit inward and notice like our body is giving us a lot of signs and cues. If we take a moment and stop and listen, it's just there's so much going on that it can be hard to do that. So, I have had clients share with me that even just having a space where we meet, let's say every other week, that they can just process what's going on. Maybe it's something that we've been working on in terms of a certain goal, or maybe we lose the agenda and they're just processing like maybe something that their doctor said or something that just is bugging them from how they're feeling. And it's just a space for them that they have set aside the time to have that conversation and not the swirl of whatever else is going on in their life. So just that in itself, of working with a coach can create that space naturally for people. So I think the biggest thing is like slow down and thinking about really what works for you. And I'm guiding people and asking questions and offering up pieces that help unravel that.
Yeah, you bring up a good point in terms of just the self-awareness aspect. It's so important whether you have ADHD or not, understanding how your brain works, how your body feels. When I have a client that's saying they're feeling resistance to doing something, right?
Hmm.
I will often say, one of the first things I want you to do is, where am I feeling this in my body?
Hmm.
Right? Because sometimes our body starts to tell us stuff before our brain really recognizes it. And so when you can start to recognize, oh, when I'm feeling resistance, I feel it here or here. When you start to feel it, you're going to go, oh, it's just going to make that connection faster, I think. But it's really about just being curious, looking at all of it as just information, it's just data, right?
Exactly.
And there's, again, as we mentioned before, there's no shame in any of this. It is, if something doesn't work for you, that's just maybe not the right thing for you. That doesn't mean you have failed.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
to just be curious, it makes such a big difference. Tell me your thoughts on this. I feel like when you look at it through a lens of curiosity and any of the things we're talking about, it takes you out of that a little bit, and it almost makes you a third person to what's happening, which that
You're
can,
watching above, right? There's an expression where it's
yeah,
like the balcony and the dance where you're watching above on the balcony and
yeah.
observing. Yes.
Yes, and it takes any sting out sometimes
Hmm.
because we're very self-critical.
Yeah. Sting, shame. I mean, all kinds of things, right? That can come up. Why can't I do better? Or just this notion of I should be doing this or I should have figured this out by now. Like, but
Yeah,
no, there's no shoulds, right? I mean,
I'm
it's
always like,
just
quit shitting on yourself. Like, there's
exact,
no
exactly. I love it. Yes,
It doesn't matter what you think you should be doing. What works for you?
exactly.
That's
And
what
that's
we're looking
and
for.
that can be hard to just sit and figure out yourself, right? Um,
Especially if it isn't what is considered mainstream,
mhm, yeah,
you know? That can be really tricky to navigate because it makes us feel like we're doing something wrong still, but it's not. It's just how your body works or your
right,
brain or whatever.
exactly.
So, all right. So when you hit burnout or
Mm,
roadblocks in your own
mhm,
life,
yep.
okay, what are your go-to habits or routines for recovering?
Yes, definitely happens. I actually recently have started incorporating sometimes napping, like just actual real rest. And I have noticed, at least for me, something that happens, and I hear this from others too, whether it's 3 p.m. crash or what I'm labeling the adult witching hour of like, that time. Remember when you had babies and it was like the witching hour of everyone's crying? I mean, I
Yes.
am starting to feel that as an adult where it's like everyone's home from school and then there's like dinner and then there's activities. And sometimes I'm like, I need a little extra energy to get through that. And so there's been some days where I've given myself permission to just take a 30-minute, like close my eyes. And it is amazing, like the refresh that sometimes, at least for me, can come from just little bits of that. So I think for me, it's rest and just slowing down. Um, I also like, I think a few months ago, there was just a point where I was really feeling a bit like in that burnout mode. And I said, you know what? I am taking a full day off in the middle of the week, not like a weekend, not like an hour. I'm literally taking a day off. I'm doing stuff for myself that will feel rejuvenating. And it was amazing and it was great. And it was really just a refresh that I needed. I was really listening in to my body, not trying to push through more. I shared about it, and I had a client tell me, you inspired me to do the same thing. And a few weeks later, she's like, I'm taking a day off, like on a Tuesday, randomly, and I'm just going to go and do what I feel like doing. And just being okay with that. And did the whole world explode? No. It's knowing, like noticing when you need those little bits. So that's what helps me.
I love that you do napping. I am a big fan of naps. That is one thing that I have been particularly good at in terms of like the power nap.
Hmm.
Like I can do a 10 or 15-minute nap.
Hmm.
People are like, "How do you do that?" And I'm like, I always set a timer because the
Well,
only
for
times I
sure, you need to set a timer. Yeah.
yeah, but I always wake up before. I always do, but the days I don't, I sleep longer and then I'm
Hmm.
groggy and I'm cranky.
Right.
But like a 10 to
It is
15
finding
minute
that sweet spot.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And I had read somewhere they're like, don't do longer than 30 minutes or
Mhm.
something like that, because then you start to go into deeper sleep. But I just stick to, 10 to 20 minutes and it's good. The other thing about how you just like took a day, I think that's brilliant. It's just brilliant. I think more people need to embrace that if they can. When I work with clients, I have to teach them how to take breaks because we have this fear of taking breaks. It's like, but I have the motivation now, and if I stop, I won't get it back, and whatever. So I have to show them if you do it the way I teach, you'll end up doing better work. And I think that you taking that day
Yes.
was a way of taking a break because then you can
Well,
do better work.
and it's funny you say that because the moment I stopped pushing is I had all these ideas pop in my head about, oh, I should write about this, or oh, I should try that. This would be great for this client. It just naturally came in because I gave my body and my brain a moment to just stop.
Yes.
I mean, and I hear that all the time from people.
Yeah.
It's just, it's again, it's maybe one of those see it to believe it things because it can feel so hard to do that. How am I going to take a day off? Who's going to do this? Who's going to. But yeah,
Yeah, learning to delegate is a
mm,
gift,
yes,
I think. We're not great at it because
yes,
as I mentioned in your intro, right? Women usually are the ones who are doing most of the things.
uh-huh,
And so to stop and say, "Okay, no, I need you to do this. I need you to do this," even if it's just for a day.
uh-huh,
For a lot of us, it can feel really overwhelming to do that. And I also know and I'm saying this because this is who I tend to be. Well, by the time I finish showing them how to do all this, I could have just done it myself, right?
uh-huh.
But understanding that there's long-term benefits. Yes, this time you could have done it yourself, but now they know how to do it. It's like the whole like teaching somebody how to fish thing, right? So more women need to start doing that because we should not be doing everything.
I agree.
All right. So how do you see the future of health coaching evolving as technologies are evolving, medications are playing a bigger role in client decisions and outcomes. Like, how do you see the future of this evolving?
So great question. So many, so many ways I could take that question. I think from a technology standpoint, you're thinking about AI or other uses of technology. There's so much great opportunity with coaching, with just healthcare in general, in terms of access to information and efficiencies and all kinds of benefits that you see all over the place. I think there's also the end of the day, like the human interaction, the human element of connecting with a person, of having a conversation, of genuine empathy you can't get over a piece of technology. I mean, even recently, I was trying to make a doctor appointment and I actually thought I was talking to a person when it connected me to something to take down my information. A few minutes in, it took me to realize I was actually talking to like a bot or something.
Yeah.
And then the practice like called me back a few minutes later. I'm not sure if that was efficient, but maybe that is what is the future and what is working for them. But I did want to talk to a person, right? And feel like that there was some kind of human piece. I mean, I think in terms of health coaching, even in general, I think more and more practitioners are realizing that, the way that I often work with providers is they are really the what and the diagnosing, but they are not necessarily, not for any ill will, but like trained in the how and the implementation and actually what's going to happen outside of the doctor's office or the treatment room. Like they might say, do XYZ, but like, are they working with the individual to really figure out how that works in the routine? And so there's a real connection to patient outcomes and success. So I do
Hmm.
think that is also in our future. And I think, with medications too, I think there is no one way or the other, black and white, you shouldn't use medication. It's really about how you keep looking what's under the hood and what else might be contributing and how do you treat with traditional methods and with medication alongside lifestyle levers versus one or the other.
Yeah.
So I think
I
that
think
is
they can
certainly where we're
all
going. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they can all find a way to work together, but it's really about understanding what does this look like for you.
Uh-huh.
And I think that you make a great point that I think people doing what you do are a great plus for doctors, et cetera, to be like, okay, this is what we want you to do. And then sending them to you to say, okay, now help them put this together. You know what
Exactly.
I'm saying?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
yeah, it's really overwhelming for a lot of people.
Right.
As you said, like everybody's got so much on their plate. And it's like trying to navigate that. It's like a doctor saying that to you, you're like, okay, great. I mean, that's great in theory, but like,
Right.
how am I going to actually implement this? So,
Right.
yeah, I agree. All right, it is time for the rapid fire round.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Just
Okay.
answer whatever comes top of mind. Are you ready?
Sure. Go ahead.
All right. First question, favorite under 5 minutes meal or snack?
Oh, meal, I would say leftovers. So I love dinner leftovers, like reheating something, pasta, proteins, veggies I usually have cut up. That is easy. Like that is often my lunch, right? Where I have something that is leftover and already made. One of my favorite snacks is kiwi. I love kiwi. Got lots
Hmm.
of great nutrients, fiber. I cut open a whole kiwi, scoop it out, and I have it with a big handful of almonds.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm going to try that one.
Yeah.
Uh, all right. One health myth you wish you could retire forever.
Cardio is king. I think that's a big like midlife, like we were taught, in our teens, 20s, 30s, whatever, like run, cardio, intense workouts, and maybe they have a place, but I think it really shifts big time in midlife.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm not sure that there's just a general always understanding of that, of how to balance that and how sometimes that can be putting yourself, for example, into more of a dysregulated state, even though you may not realize, or impacting all kinds of things. So I don't think cardio is necessarily king. Important, but not the end all be all.
Agreed. Agreed. I hate cardio. It just in general. And what's funny is I used to run,
Uh-huh.
but I was like, it. I was always in like the 12-minute or longer mile. Like, I took my time, but then my knees were like, yeah, we're done. Anyway, okay. What's your go-to mood booster when your energy is low?
Hmm. Partly because I like this, partly because maybe I have to, but I would say taking my dog for a walk. Getting
Mm,
outside, and like with a dog, I'm outside cold, hot, rain, whatever, which um would not necessarily be the case. We've had our dog Freddie for about almost three years. So that is a great way to just like for me, just decompress for a few minutes, get some outside air.
yeah, I think getting out in nature, for people with ADHD in particular, it is really helpful for
Mm-hmm.
regulating. It is
Mm-hmm.
so good. Okay, if you could collaborate with any wellness expert, living or dead, who would it be?
Mm. I would say Mark Hyman. He is a fairly well-known doctor in the functional medicine space, came up through, more traditional medicine, Harvard trained, but he has a pretty well-known presence, I think, online. And what I really like about his approach is it just feels very logical when he speaks and simple, and he breaks down very complex topics into just digestible terms. So I would love to work with him.
Oh, it sounds awesome. All right, finish this sentence. Success in health looks like.
Oh, I think I would say something like really taking the time to discover or understand what your individual body needs to thrive.
Love it. Love it. All right, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining me today. You do really great work, really important work, I think. You help to make this area that can be really overwhelming for people, ADHD or not, feel doable. And I think that's really important. And I'm really happy that you're doing it. I have learned a lot. I know my listeners or watchers have as well. So thank you so much for being here.
It was my pleasure. It's great to chat with you.
So, how can people get in touch with you?
So people can find me on Instagram. The handle is at Nefesh, Nefesh living. You can go to my website, www.nefeshliving.com. Always happy to chat with people, with an initial consult, chemistry check to see if coaching might be a fit. So you can find that on my website too.
All right, awesome. And I will have all of her information in the show notes as well. So, let me know in the comments, what was your biggest takeaway from today? Mine was that I am really happy that I take naps because it's helping my nervous system. All right. If this show resonated with you, please follow us, leave a review or comment and share this with a friend who could use it. There is a link in the description that makes it super easy to leave a review. And the more people who do this, the more ADHD women we can help. Thank you again, Rebecca. I really appreciate you being here and sharing your wonderful wisdom with us. And thank you all for listening or watching and for joining us. This is ADHD And with Jorie Houlihan. And until next time, stay curious.